Claudio, will we start your part? You ready?
Yes.
Yes, I hope, yes, everybody managed to make some coffee to continue. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's go to your part and let's discuss business financial management solutions and how this is connected with yes, we see your screen. You're welcome.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah. Hello, everybody. I didn't introduce really myself. At the beginning, I was a bit late. I'm Claudio Cungi, and I'm the head of product at Strands. And yeah, just before starting, really 2 words about Strands. Strands is a fintech that operates in the market since more than 10 years now. We actually started as building AI, but applied to music. So the idea at the beginning was to define basically algorithms that suggested the next best music based on what was your path in discovering music. These algorithms were then sold to Apple, sorry, that then implemented this, of course, into the iTunes stores at that time. Then, of course, as you see, I mean, the story just began. We entered definitely the PF. We leveraged the AI expertise we did to enter the money management industry, meaning PFM, and then we began the implementing the across Europe. Then, of course, in the recent past, we started exploiting also inorganic source of growth. Of course, thanks to partnership. The first biggest partnership we can talk about is, of course, Mastercard in 2018. Then Oracle Cloud. Oracle with the cloud. And then, of course, the recent acquisition of Criff, which happened last year in April. After that, yeah, we keep continue growing, and now we are, of course, having a, I would say, pretty intense track record of implementation across the globe, as you see. Of course, we have been implementing several kind of products. We will talk later about this, but just to say that, of course, we tend to cooperate with, as you see, typically financial institution. Our clients are typically bank, and they, of course, rely on us for AI applied both to retail customer and to small business customer. And of course, focus of today is going to be the small business customer. I would just take the chance to have 5 minutes of introduction. I don't want to bore all of you, just to keep a bit the context, I mean, but why is basically we think that now is the time to introduce new tailored product for small business customer. Well, we think that, I mean, in the last 3 years, in my personal opinion, I mean, operating also as in this market as professional, I personally see that this market has been evolving pretty much, and it has accelerated the change in the last 2 years. I think due to four key drivers. Okay, perhaps there are many others, but I think we can summarize four. The one is open banking, and we're not talking, of course, only about PSD2. PSD2 is for sure a key enabler, and we're gonna see later what we mean with open banking. Second thing is the competitive arena. I mean, new fintechs are growing and rising across Europe, but also banks and are pretty much, and ERP providers are pretty much, uh, let me say, changing their proposition. The small business behavior is, of course, changing, of course, affected by COVID, but also due to always a higher propensity in using digital channels, and not only for payments, but again, due to e-invoicing, which is becoming mandatory basically across Europe, and I guess also across the globe sometime. And then technology, meaning AI and technology has pretty much evolved, and I think this is one of the key enablers that now makes complex technology like AI, really simple, to be adopted, and that really brings great advantage both for banks, small business customer, and for all the actors of the value chain. So let us start by open banking. I mean, I don't want to do, the full history, but so open banking is, um, let me put it this way, APIs are a concept that has been spread, is not a new concept, but is a concept that has been spread particularly thanks to PSD2. APIs has brought the concept of adopting microservice architecture that basically pushes from traditional service model where basically the bank had just one option. We have to build everything in-house and we can serve the customer just through our proprietary channels. It means the bank customer can access the bank service only through the mobile banking app. Thanks to APIs and to what it implies, PSD2 and open banking, we shift to what we see in the right side of the slide, that basically is thanks to API platform, we have two effects. The first one is that banks can start adopting SaaS cloud-based model that can enable the bank, the bank to access third-party services. On the other hand, the customer can also access the bank services, not only through the bank's proprietary channels, but also thanks to other channels. We can, of course, think of the AISP, PISP capabilities that are definitely a key driver. But as it was, I think, widely said by all the participants to this roundtable today, I mean, we definitely see that via API we can connect to third parties and integrate invoices. This makes, of course, this concept of accessing a platform not only via the proprietary channel. The second thing we said is the competition that is changing. I mean, of course, we could talk about competition for days, but if I have to summarize it perhaps with some key example, cherry picking here, as I said also before, we see that different banks are evolving different proposition, different service models, typically through, of course, digital channels. As we said, challenger bank like Holvi or Penta or Conto, which are not always a challenger bank, but they offer payment account. They offer, so to make everything simple, they offer invoicing so that you can pay the invoices you are accounting. And of course, you have a current account to keep your balances. And then you have other simple, typically features like payroll or credit card, but typically simple features. So the aim of these fintechs is typically make life easier. Then we see other propositions in the market, like for instance, IDEXA, which is a challenger bank in Italy that is offering through open banking capabilities, basically real-time credit scoring, enabling real-time loan, thanks to credit scoring based on transactional data. These are just some of the examples, just to show you that, of course, I mean, the market is slightly changing. And of course, HSBC Kinetic, which is the new proposition we see in UK, done by HSBC, dedicated for small business, which is, by the way, powered by Strands. Then the third thing we said is the behavior of the small business. We think that, I mean, it changes in 4 directions. Well, we said digital adoption is one driver. I mean, it's not even a trend, it's state of the art now, is that small business use digital channels for everything now, also for accessing loans and cash and credit lines, which was something that they perhaps did less in the past. And also e-invoicing, as we said, is of course enabling now new features. Post-COVID, meaning that, I mean, we tend to talk too much, of course, about COVID in these days, but I mean, this is unfortunately a reality that uh, a lot of small business has faced hard times, and of course, monitoring the generation of cash, the absorption of cash is a need, and they are looking for simple tools that allows them to get hands on their cash flow, okay, to see how they're doing. Multi-banking, of course, I mean, there's always having more digital channels, more easy to open current accounts, spreads opportunistic approach in opening current accounts just to access liquidity. This, of course, is boosting the multi-banking business customer, which already had, let me say, a multi-banking propensity. And then, as we said, there are new entrepreneurs, meaning we see that there is a continuous, of course, generation of new business, of which 70% of it is made by millennials. These guys, of course, tend to look for different features in the digital banking. So typically, as we already said, they tend to have a one-stop shop experience. So they want a current account, they want to pay, and they want to see their invoices all in one place. So the last thing is the technologies that is changing, but now let me see from the AI perspective. So looking at this funnel bottom up, I mean, we can aggregate a huge amount of data, also thanks to PSD2 now. So if we are able to catch this data, apply on top of it data enrichment, which basically allows to categorize the transactional data. If we then apply on top of the data enrichment an artificial intelligence layer, let me say, that applies machine learning principles, we can, of course, catch more value out of this data. And we can, of course, fire event-based marketing. So basically, when we see how the customer behavior is changing, we can, of course, trigger real-time notification alerting the customer, alerting the small business customer that something is changing and he should take a look at it. So considering all of these factors, of course, we wanted also to show you how we as Strands are, of course, trying to put the small business customer in control of their finances. We tend to, today, I'm going to focus the attention on two models of our wide product suite. It's basically the BFM, as we said, on the Open Hub, which is a platform that allows connection to third parties like aggregators, as we're going to see, and or invoicing providers. So to have both third-party accounts and the invoicing provider all in one place. Who is this tool for? Well, of course, we talk about small business. The concept of small business, I think we tend to abuse this concept, meaning small business, it's a, it's an ocean, of course. But in my opinion, the BFM should be adopted by those people that do not have, let me say, a financial culture in their small company. So of course they decide to run their business not to take care of the finances. They want to make business. They don't want to make the administration stuff. So we think it's suited for all the small business that, of course, are really unstructured and need something very simple that allows them to keep control on their finances. Merchants or freelancer, of course, are definitely a subset of this small business, but also tax accountants that they, of course, want to help and support their small business customer taking care of their finances. And of course, we think the BFM can really help them. Which are the key features? Well, the key features, as we're gonna see, are basically 6, and I'm gonna just jump, to show you a bit of the demo, just showing you some of the key features we think that we can show you, and that makes this tool, we think, very, very powerful. which are account aggregation. As I said, all thanks to PSD2, we are able to aggregate third-party accounts, and thanks to CRIF, that is AISP and is an aggregator, has aggregator capabilities, sorry. We are able to aggregate third parties transactions, and so also to have all these use cases integrated into the BFM. We have predictive insights, meaning that, as I said, and I'm going to show you, we are able to forecast which is the financial behavior of the customer, meaning for instance, what's the trend of its aggregators balance, what's the trend of its cash flow. I can show this to the customer, as we're going to see, and I'm of course able to fire him insights to predict what's going to happen thanks to AI. Then we have, let me say, simple financial planning features like budgeting, payment calendar, categorization, that allows breakdown of expenses for a very simple overview. And of course, electronic invoicing that we are going to show you now. I'm going to just jump, here. So just to show you a bit how it really looks like. So on the left side of the screen, what we do, as I said, we aggregate the current account. So we of course tend to we allow, sorry, to aggregate current accounts from, of course, as the PSD2 allows, from different third parties. So for instance, here we of course aggregated fake accounts here we created, which are Lloyd's and HSBC. This of course allows us to have, first thing, a very simple use case, like we can see what's our aggregated income and aggregated spending, which shows us which are our cash flows. So the first thing that I, as a small business customer, see as soon as I land on my BFM is basically how much is my income and how much is my expenses as of today. But what I can also see is that the expected income, because as I said, we can forecast what's going to happen till the end of the month and also in the future month. So the first thing I see here, without even looking at it, without even looking at the figures, okay, I graphically see that the lockdown and the pandemic was basically affecting strongly my finances and my business in the first quarter, okay, in February and March. What that happened was that it seems like situation is recovering and the cash flows are improving, and they're expecting to improve even more by the end of the month. So by clicking here, end of the month, I can see that actually income are expecting to double, sorry, by the end of the month, as well as expenses actually. But as income are twice my spending, I'm expecting to finish this month with 184K of positive cash flow. What we're seeing now is just the current account. Okay, so of course, then you can trigger different use cases. Let me say, like, the first thing is, of course, I can have a look in my financial calendar. Okay, like, okay, but what's happening then in the next days? Why is it supposed to increase or to decrease? So for instance, I look here that the 28th, so next week, I'm supposed to pay. So the reason why, sorry, expenses are supposed to rise is because I'm still supposed to pay actually all the salaries of my employees. So this is one of the reasons why actually my expenses are supposed to double. And of course, I can look, so in the future, how actually my finances will change. But of course, I can also look at the past here, okay? Of course, checking which expenses and income I had per day. And then, of course, we can have a proper breakdown of the financial calendar. But let's have a look, on the other hand, on the invoicing. So let us start from this assumption. As we aggregated here the current accounts from third parties, what we think is that we can aggregate also more invoicing provider, let me say. Okay, now because I of course aggregated them, but we should be able here to aggregate also other third parties invoicing provider. We typically tend to have out of the box aggregated the largest at the European scale, which are QuickBooks, as I said, Xero, and Sage. Then, of course, we can think of aggregating also a local invoicing provider. Once we have aggregated invoices, we can, of course, show more breakdown and helping the small business customer going into the invoicing section, for instance. Okay, now, of course, it's the good thing of being live. Let me just re-enter. Oh, here we go. I apologize. The session went in timeout. This is my apologies because we had a coffee and I forgot to refresh before starting the demo. This is my apologies. And I had to show you also, yeah, here we connected the invoicing provider. We land here on the invoicing section. And what we see is that we have, of course, two sides of the medal. The one is the sales cycle and the other is the bill cycle. So payable, receivable, and payable. And of course, what I can see here is the breakdown between what is paid, what is pending, what is overdue, and what is due. And I can see here the breakdown between, of course, the past. Okay. Of course, what I see here is that basically it's pretty much a mess. Like it seems like I have very, very poor invoicing paid, and basically everything seems to be overdue. So what happens basically is that we can reconcile invoicing on the transactions coming from the current accounts. So as it was previously said, again, aggregating transactions thanks to the PSD2 allows us to have the possibility to match the transactions coming from my current accounts with the invoicing I had been aggregating from third parties invoicing provider. Basically, again, matching these two, we have the reconciliation of payments that allows us, of course, to have a proper monitoring of what we're actually seeing here, which is the status of the payable and receivable. And this is something that is very, very powerful in our opinion. We can really show very simple use cases to the end customer. And also to answer one question that was done before, this is what we think is having everything in one place, because this is our white label. But of course, this can be reflected into the online banking of the bank. So you're gonna likely have the monitoring of your cash flows, which is your transaction list. So the transactions coming from the bank. You're gonna have the invoicing, so you will be able to see invoicing cycle. And then you will likely have other sections like, of course, payments. So you'll likely be able to check your single current accounts from all the banks you have aggregated, transfer liquidity from one current account to another in order to pay invoices, but also ask for liquidity. For instance, you could ask for factoring, like if you see here, of course, imagine having a cash flow problem. This is not the case of our Sibyl Trelawney. Uh, but if you had any cash flow problem, we could definitely ask for a factoring, or we could ask for an overdraft, or for any other product that supports his generation of liquidity. So the idea basically is, again, to have very simple use cases, very effective, to help the small business customer get control on his finances. As we said, there is one more use case I would like to show you, is the financial planning. So let me show you the budgeting, okay? Because of course the aim then of the BFM should also be to help him monitor his finances. Okay, as we said, even without having any idea of what financial planning is. Okay, so imagine having a section where you can set budgeting by asset class, which is basically the category of your expenses. And of course, you can set many budgets in order to see how much you have spent and what's your progress here on your timeline. Of course, the sum of all of this will show you that we are actually having a budget that now it seems like everything is fine. We didn't spend nothing this month, and there are still 7 days to go. But imagine, of course, having a more critical situation here. You could, of course, monitor what's the overall budget I set, and then how am I doing considering the breakdown in the single category of expenses. We really think this is a simple use case, but that can be very, very effective. Also considering, again, the small business customer that typically tend to have poor knowledge, and this is what we think we have to help them, making really all day life much easier. So just to wrap up and to give you also some highlights on the platform, then, I mean, what's the advantage for the BFM user that was using the tool we saw? Well, as you saw, the UI is very important. This is something also that was widely said before me. This has to enable easy and fast adoption. Holistic view, meaning we saw that we have to aggregate third-party accounts, invoicing provider, so to give a full picture of the customer finance, so that he can just open his online banking, jump into it, and just have a coffee again, and look at his finances without having to change between tabs and between all his accounts to look for the right picture, without having to call his tax accountant, by the way. Past and forecast cash flow monitoring. As we saw, I mean, you need to show to the small business customer, I mean, what could it look like next month? This is what we have to answer ourselves. Financial education. We need to support small business customer in, of course, having a very simple view and categorization. On one hand, data enrichment enables this in two ways. The first way is letting him understand what's the absorption and the sources of income and expenses. But on the other hand, also triggering insights, as we said, that will allow him to have a very, very quick look on his finances. Which are the benefits for the banks? Because, of course, it's about caring about the small business customer, but typically banks, of course, tend to do this for, of course, having the best return they can have. We really think that this allows to have at least 4 return on the investments. The first one is retention and engagement. I mean, the BFM increases the adoption. So it increases the usage of the bank's digital channels, especially among multi-banking users. And even more, it increases this usage also thanks to e-invoicing integration, as we saw. Data set enrichment, meaning that, of course, uh, enriching the transactions allows two things in our opinion. The first thing is the BFM and the data enrichment gives the bank the perfect excuse to let the customer aggregate his third-party accounts. Of course, the other thing is that if we are able to aggregate the accounts, we are able to categorize them. And of course, the bank is able to get a deeper view on the customer's behavior, which brings us to cross-selling. Because again, if our motto, by the way, is you know me as a bank, you can help me as a small business customer. So of course you can monetize me. Because again, knowing the small business customer thanks to the data enrichment can help the customer getting real-time insights. Real-time insights can of course bring to a solution that is offered by the bank to access better liquidity, for instance, which comes, of course, in saying real-time marketing. Acquisition. Again, this is perhaps aggressive, but as we saw, there are new challenger banks like Holvi that are sending new aggressive value proposition through the digital channels, and base everything on a simple interaction. We really think that having a simple interaction with a 360 degree on finance really can support the bank strategy in positioning itself on the digital channel, which should definitely bring also towards a better acquisition process. Actually, what we just showed you is actually not something that is typically just in our mind. This is something that is widely adopted and implemented by top players on the market, like Novo Banco, that has recently launched the BFM within its small business banking, online banking. Again, HSBC Kinetic UK, which is, of course, another of our big, great customers. And they have launched a new service model dedicated to small business customer, thanks to the BFM. In Italy, Medio Credito Centrale, which is a bank that has decided to launch a new proposition thanks to the BFM. And then other very important banks also, such as Virgin Money and the OCBC Bank. One thing I did mention is that how can you, as a bank, consume our services? So you have two options to make it easy. You can adopt our cloud as a service model, or you can definitely still choose the software approach. So basically, we can deploy our software both into the bank's legacy or into the bank's public cloud. So we are tend to be pretty flexible, even if we are very hard investing into the SaaS approach, which we think it's again one of the big trends we are seeing that is also spreading very strong across the globe, I would say. Furthermore, as you saw, we also have UI, white label UIs, and you can definitely adopt our white label UIs or adopt widgets, so extracting portion of codes, let me say, that can be easily integrated into third parties interfaces. So definitely the idea is to speed up even more time to market. So this was, of course, at a very high level, but I think it I give the idea. So from my side, I think this was it. I tried to be, I hope it was clear, but I tried to be pretty fast.
Yes, thank you, Claudio. I'm encouraging also everybody ask your questions either type or please turn on your microphone and camera and say it live.